Hey guys, it's Ivan, and in today's video we're gonna go over all the different features that are present in the running order, including the new additions from the new firmware updates. So the running order is a great little 6HP module that can act as an expander for any type of sequencer. Its unique ability to generate trigger patterns based on Euclidean rhythms, fully programmable SH101 style sequences with variable repeat amounts, clock division, multiplication, can bring either a more generative approach to your compositions or just expand and improve on what you already have in your case. The best thing about it is it's very fast, intuitive, so the new inspiration is just one step away. And as it's built for live performances, it also features track mutes and just enough control on the faceplate to let you play with your patterns on the fly. As you can see over here, I have a simple patch where I have two running orders and the tracks are connected to the Queen of Pentacles, to the kick drum, clap, and two samples. And one running order is also clocking another one, and this way you can use one as the master and you can use another one as your sort of sub-trigger sequencer where you have extra control for the clock divider or multiplier. So without further ado, let's start with the first mode, which is called the step mode, which is inspired by the SH101 style sequencing. So first, to access it, you have to flip the switch of the track to number 1. Now we're going to be editing the track number 1. And over here, for example, if I want to have a 4 on the floor kick pattern, you can enter 1 active step, 3 rest steps, flip the switch back to activate, and now we have a simple kick drum sequence. You can go a bit more complicated by entering, for example, 1 step, then 3 rests, another one, then back. This way you can also create interesting patterns because, again, you're not limited to 16 steps, so the pattern will only loop when it reaches the last step. And this way you can explore polyrhythms, polymetrics, and other types of sequences. And let's, for example, start and create another sequence for the clap. So we want it to be the first 3 steps empty, then we want a clap, then another 3 steps empty. So as you can hear, the tracks are rotating around each other, so the pattern never really repeats the same every cycle. On top of this, we can start adding repeats. For example, we can create something a little simpler for the kick drum. 1 kick, 3 rests, then 2 more rests, 1 kick, 2 more rests. Let's activate 1 track over here. Let's switch it to the track mode again. And just enter 1 active step, so we'll have a 16th note sequence. Let's also set another track over here, and let's go and create something semi-randomly for a more unexpected result. We can also now divide these 2 channels by using the divider knob. Let's maybe edit the hi-hat pattern by making it not just 16th notes, but a little bit more interesting. So 1, 2, 3. So while the switch is in the middle position, this is your performance mode, and you can add repeats to your steps, and this way you can extend your patterns. And you can also mute the tracks by just pressing the button. As you can see, the SH101 mode can either be used to create very simple sequences like 4-on-a-roll kick drum or anything else, or you can also use it to create sequences of various and different lengths, and that way you can create rotating patterns that always evolve in time, and you never really have to think about your total pattern lengths. Apart from being able to enter steps and rests into your sequence or editing the repeats amount in your SH101 style sequence, there is also another layer that introduces probability per step and ratcheting per step. So let me show you how to do this. First of all, we have to switch into the edit mode, and as you can see, the LED is red for the SH101 mode, so we're in the right place. And now, so since we are on track 1, we have the first repeats knob or parameter 1 that will control the ratcheting amount per step, and the secondary parameter or the parameter number 2 is going to be our probability per step. So for example, instead of using the kick drum, let's focus on hi-hat because it will be easier to hear the result. So first of all, again, we're on track 1. We can enter one step that's active, and then once we start tweaking the parameter number 2 for track 1, this is going to be remembered the next time we press a step. So, for example, here probability is going to be 0, here probability is going to be 100, so we can fit it around 50% and start adding active steps for the hi-hat sequence, but with various probability. So now if I switch back, you will not just hear a 16th pattern rolling. And the pattern will never really repeat because there is probability involved. Second way is you can combine the probability with ratcheting. So for example, let's start a new sequence. Let's delete this. To delete a sequence, by the way, you can just switch to the track and enter one rest, which is an empty step. And it means that your sequence is technically empty now. So let's go back to the edit mode. We'll press, the first step is just going to be a normal step. Second step, I want to have a ratchet set to around 2, 3 with probability around 40%. Then I want probability of 80 and maybe a bit more ratcheting. Then the next step, I don't want ratcheting, but I want my probability to be around 80%. One more over here. Let's include another ratchet over here. And another one here, and let's hear the result. And then we can add a kick drum over here. Let's add a clap. So we want the first 3 empty clap, and then 3 more. So again, just to recap the way the probability and ratcheting works. So if you're on track 1, it means your primary parameter is ratcheting and secondary parameter is probability. And if, for example, you're on track 2, now the position is reversed. So for track 2, the primary parameter is going to be the parameter number 2, which is going to be ratcheting. And the secondary one, which is again this knob over here, is going to be probability. So the way it works is that for number 1, this is ratcheting probability. For number 2, this is ratcheting and this is probability. So now let's try to maybe create a pattern using only the SH101 mode and also utilizing the ratcheting and probability features. So, for example, the kick drum. Let's change the clap pattern. Now let's edit this sound over here. So again, for track number 2, the first one is going to be ratcheting over here. The second one is going to be probability, which is this knob. So let's start adding a sequence. Then I want some ratcheting over here, probability full. Let's adjust the decay bit. Now we can also play around with the clock divider and also the repeats for the sequence. Now that you have seen how you can program patterns using the SH101 mode, let's switch to the next mode, which is called Euclidean. So first of all, to access it, again, you have to switch to the Edit mode. And over here for track 1, if you want to switch it from the SH101 mode, which is shown by the red LED, to Euclidean, all you have to do is just press the track button, and you will see the LED light up purple over here. Same you can do for track 2 over here. And again, let's switch it to Euclidean on this one as well. So now that all the LEDs are purple, we can start editing the Euclidean mode. But first of all, let me explain to you how you can set the length of the Euclidean circle. So first of all, by default, the Euclidean circle is going to be 16 steps. You can edit it by either pressing the step button, which is going to be incrementing the length by 1. So as soon as I press this button, we'll be adding steps to the sequence. So again, if we switch over here, now our pattern is 16 steps. To make it 1 step long, all I have to do is press this once, 2 step long twice, 3 step long 3 times, and so on. But if you want to start, let's say, with 16, all you have to do is press the rest button. It will add 16 steps. And if I want to make my pattern 32 steps, I press rest again. Now it's going to be 32 steps. And if I want it to be 33 steps, I can just add 1 step over here, and we are set. So this works for all different tracks. And now let's switch back over here. And as you can see, we don't really hear anything because we haven't set the fill amount of Euclidean circle. And this is done by using the repeats knobs. So over here, we'll be selecting all the different patterns available for the track lengths that we have set. Let's set it to 16 steps just to make it simpler. So as you hear, over here we have the simple 404 pattern. Let's do something here as well. We can also use the clock divider. Additionally, since the fill amount is controlled by the repeats knobs and repeats knobs have CV inputs, we can also sequence this position by using external CV. So let's try to use the total recall to, for example, set the pattern for the hi-hats. Then we need to clock the total recall, so we'll take out the clock from the second running order, place it here. We can do the same for the other track. We can also control the kick drum. We can tweak the values on the fly. The same way as we had extra parameters for the SH1 mode, such as ratcheting and probability, we also have extra parameters for the Euclidean mode. And the way this works is that once you switch to the Euclidean mode, the primary parameter for the track 1, which is going to be repeats number 1, is going to set the pattern rotation of the Euclidean circle, and the secondary parameter is going to set the probability. So for example, let's start with hi-hats, and I will show you how the probability works. So first of all, we switch over here, set the track length to 16 steps, go back, set our repeats. Let's just make it a full pattern like this. And now the secondary parameter for the track number 1 is going to be probability. So if I reduce it, you will hear that some steps are no longer playing. If it's 0, nothing will play, and 100 is our original pattern. So now to show you the pattern rotation, it's easier to have a bit more of elements going in the track so that you will hear it better. So let's switch over here, set it to 16 for the kick drum. Let's add a clap. As you can hear, it's a very simple pattern, but pay attention where the clap is. So now, if we switch to track number 2, the primary parameter is going to be repeats number 2, which is going to control the pattern rotation. And as you'll hear, the clap will no longer fall in between the kick drums. This way you can sort of shift the position of your triggers in a sequence. Let's add another sequence over here, 16 steps. For example, if we want to rotate the second track over here, we switch to track number 2, and the primary parameter is going to be repeats 2. So we just shifted it to the left side. We can also add some probability. We can also adjust probability for the clap, which is going to be repeats number 1. Let's add a big clap with reverb. We can also adjust the probability for the kick drum. Now that you have seen how you can create patterns by either using the SH101 mode and Euclidean mode, let's focus on the performance mode, and this mode is accessed by flipping the switch to the middle position. Over here, you can have control over mutes of each track by using these 4 buttons, and you can also have repeats, and repeats is like a different version of the ratchets where, for example, ratchets, they happen within the 1 step and they can create sort of like very fast repeats without affecting the general length of your pattern. But repeats are actually extra repetitions of the node in your pattern. So for example, if my pattern is 16 steps and I add repeats of number 2 for the last step, I will have a pattern of 18 steps. And as repeats, they work per step. And for example, if our pattern is 16 steps and I have repeat set to number 3, it means that every step that will be played in the pattern will have 3 extra repeats. So in the end, your pattern is going to be way longer than 16 steps. So let's try to use these functions and try to create some sort of interesting pattern going. And one more thing is that we have a clock divider and multiplier over here. And this will also affect the speed of the repetitions. And there is an extra mode where if you switch this to fully counterclockwise, you will see on the panel it's written tuplets. And what tuplets means is that you can use the repeats to make triplets, quadruplets, and so on. And this is like an extra layer of groove to your pattern creation. So without further ado, let's try to make a new pattern. Let's disconnect this clap and connect it to trigger this envelope. And over here, I have a simple voice of Godspeed going to Squawk Dirty, controlled by the Airstreamer. And then it goes to Milky Way and to Cockpit. So at least we have a new element going in our pattern. So let's switch over here. We'll set the pattern to 16 steps. Let's unmute it. So here we're using Euclidean for the kick drum. Let's also use Euclidean for the bass line. Let's unmute. Over here, I will switch back to the normal mode for the hi-hats and start adding hi-hats with some probability to create some variation and maybe occasional ratcheting. Unmute. Let's also leave the normal Euclidean mode over here, but let's make it not 16 steps, but let's say 18. Let's add 2 more. Let's unmute it. For the hi-hats, we can start playing around with the repeats. And let's also use the clock output from the second running order into the total recall that will generate 3 different CVs. Let's take this and control the pattern of the baseline. So another quick note over here, let's pause this for a second. The moment you plug a cable to control, for example, repeats or the pattern rotation for the Euclidean, the value that is set at is going to be remembered. So if I plug it, this value is now fixed. And now from here, you can start using this knob as your attenuator. So this way you can find the sweet spot that you want, and then you can start modulating from that spot instead of having to kind of add an extra offset to offset your general parameter over here. So let's unmute again. Let's also use another output to control the decay of this envelope. modulate the attack. So as you can see over here, I can just improvise on this Euclidean pattern. Mute the kick drum if I want. Now let me show you how we can use the tuplets functionality, and to make it work you have to sync the running order to an external clock source, and since we have a hi-hats over here, let's just change this to make the first running order our main clock source and plug it over here. So now this one is our master, and let's set a quick and simple kick drum pattern. So as you hear, it's just a simple 4 on the floor. And as you remember, over here we had our hi-hats. So let's make this pattern new by entering some active steps and some rests so that we'll hear the repeats. So as you hear, if now I add repeats, they'll just be of the same speed as the clock source. And if I switch this clock divider to the tuplets, now we have triplets. Next we have quadruplets. Simply speaking, what tuplets does is that it stretches the repeats within the one bar, or within, let's say, one kick drum over here. So let's hear that again. Let's also switch this to a normal track mode and create a new pattern. And start adding repeats. Another way to use running order as your utility clock divider or multiplier is to essentially feed it any clock source. So for example, here we'll just use one of them as our main clock source, but it can be your sequencer or another clock divider. You sync it over here, and then, for example, our track 1 is going to be our clock divider. So all you have to do is exit the Euclidean mode and enter one active step. So it's just going to be either the same speed as our internal clock. So let's hear this. Or let's rather switch this to hi-hat for a nicer sound. And for example, over here, we'll just use Euclidean mode just to show you a simple sequence. For example, we'll feed it to kick. Now we can start using the divider knob to either divide our incoming clock signal or multiply. So to the left side I will divide it. This is 3/4. You can divide by 2 and you can divide by 3, and the rest will become tuplets. Again, here at 12 o'clock is just the same clock as the one that's coming in from here. Then we can start doing the 5/4 multiplication, times 2, times 3, and times 5. So in the end, this module can really become your clock divider with very interesting divisions such as 5/4 and 3/4 and tuplets, which are not really usually available in other clock divider multiplier modules. So as you can see, there are many different ways to create trigger sequences using the running order. The first mode that we went through is the SH101 mode. The second one was the Euclidean mode with variable lengths and the fill amount that can also be controlled via external CV. And as you can see, like many of these features are not really available in your main brain sequencers. So in this way, you can use this as either your little expander for the sequencer to create some interesting patterns on the side, or just to like have a little improvisation-based sequencer, or you can use it as your utility clock divider or multiplier. On top of that, running order also has zero jitter clock, so you never have to worry about sync, especially when you're using it as a divider or multiplier. And as you can see, it's very fun, but you can still go very deep inside and edit parameters per step, such as probability and ratcheting, explore different time signatures, rhythms, and you can also take the patterns that you have created, store them inside of the memory, and here you have 8 different patterns that you can save and recall. And yeah, for me personally, the best thing about this module is that you can almost randomly press different buttons and you will always come up with something interesting and related to the general rhythm that you have going on in your patch. And that will lead you to new ideas without really much effort. And this module definitely invites you to have a listener-composer type of experience, which probably is the best thing about the modular synthesizers. And that's it for today. I hope now this module makes a little bit more sense to you. And as you can see, it's not very difficult to understand once you see how you can adjust different parameters, set different track modes, play with the performance mode. And if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. We'll always be happy to answer them. And that's it for today. I'll see you next time.